Oh, Matthew with the fresh cut. Okay. That clean summer.
What up?
Tippy. Hootie hoo. Hootie hoo.
Are you Mike? Yeah.
You haven't Mike yet.
Hi, nice to meet you.
I'm Roxy.
Get started here soon, folks. What's up? What's up? How's everyone doing today?
I'm doing well. How are you doing, JD?
Oh, Jackson, I'm doing much better now that I see your beautiful white hair.
Thanks, man.
It's looking-
I used shampoo yesterday.
That's good. That's good. It's good.
Yeah.
Showering's good.
I didn't say I showered.
Oh, okay. I know it wasn't raining because you're in LA, so
Yeah. I just use the shampoo, like
you just
put it in there, let it dry.
I mean, I just use conditioner and then just leave it in most of the time. Yeah, it looks like there's some live networking happening over in the Jonathan Hillis and Company screen. Let
Yeah,
me get those hats. Come on. What is this?
Whoa. Whoa.
Merch. Okay. Love it. What is up, y'all? Good morning,
Hello.
good afternoon, good evening from wherever you're calling from. You're home here at Cabin Weekly. We're back. I feel like I've been away for months, but it was really just, 1 week where we didn't have a Cabin Weekly call. And I just want to say I'm feeling energized. I'm feeling inspired. John and Lauren were gracious hosts over at the City Council retreat on Lake Minnetonka. It was a great time, and we're going to talk about a little bit of that today. But before we get into it, I don't know if y'all have noticed, but there is a box on my screen of a person that is returning to us, and it's our very own Phil, back from paternity. Welcome back, Phil. The people missed you, Phil. What's going on? How's little Ray doing today?
Little Ray's doing well. Sleeping away like a baby.
Yeah, it's good to be back. It feels like it's been a while, but I guess it's only been a month. Um, and yeah, I think I finally have grown into the dad jokes I've been telling all along, so they all make sense now.
Good, good. And I'm happy to hear that you guys are timing Ray's nap schedule with the cabin weekly call. Really
Yeah.
appreciate that. It's good. And can we get a special hello from Roxine, Chalice, and John over here with the cabin merch hats? What's going on, fam?
Hello. Yeah, shout out from New York City. We're here for NFT NYC. Chalice and crew just put on an amazing event in partnership with Thirsty Thirsty that went beautifully well, and we had some delicious food. We're now hanging out at Empire DAO, a co-working space that is also a DAO that we've been in contact with, and we were just talking with one of the founders there, Multi-Chain Mike. We're rocking this amazing cabin swag fresh off the press. And I agree, Zach, we've got to get Phil one of these dad hats ASAP.
Multi-chain Mike. I mean, come on, this is a ridiculous world we're building. I love it. I love it. Awesome. Looks like it was a great event. I saw some stuff on Twitter. Looked like it was a very classy event too, a really elevated experience y'all were curating over there. So I'm upset I couldn't make it, but as we know, there's another crypto conference every week. I feel like
There we go.
no worries there. Awesome. Well, it's great to see everyone today. Happy summer to everyone. We are celebrating the summer solstice, so I hope you're enjoying these long days. It's been really nice getting these late sunsets. And you know, I think it's a fitting time to welcome in summer because today we're looking forward and towards Cabin's 4th season, Summer 22. And it's just perfect timing that we're also celebrating the June and summer solstice. Now, the solstice, the sun reaches its highest and northernmost point in the sky. And that's where we are right now. We're looking forward. There's so much exciting stuff happening within the DAO, so much to a point where it's actually hard to keep track of everything, which is why we have calls like this, where we can bring in different members of our community to share updates. So we're going to go through some updates today. But before we do, I just wanted to hold some space. Are there any newbies on the call that maybe this is your first time joining a Cabin Weekly call, or maybe you are just kind of rejoining, or you've kind of been working on some other stuff and you want to just reintroduce yourselves or say hi to the community? Just want to hold some space for anyone that would like to say hi.
I'm Timmy. I did the onboarding a little bit ago, and I think I kind of got lost. I didn't quite get on catch, and I figured, you know, summer's starting. This would be a perfect time to just hop back in and see what's going on.
Love it, Timmy. Welcome back.
I'm Daryl. I think I was on one right at the beginning, maybe 6 weeks ago when I started doing some stuff with Cabin, and I've been working with Roxine. I helped with the launch of the writing NFTs, and yeah, actually got to meet her and go to the event
In person.
hours ago. So hoping I can meet the rest of you guys who are in New York right now as well.
Very cool. Welcome, Daryl. And thanks for your help with the NFT writing project. I was doing some snooping on Roxine's Quest proposal, and it looks like there might be some more stuff coming about some writing NFTs, which I'm very curious about, which maybe we'll talk about today. Awesome. Anyone else would like to say hello? I feel like we have a lot of familiar faces here. Saturn, I don't think we've had a chance to meet at one-on-one. Welcome. How are you?
I'm doing great. I also just did the onboarding call recently, and I'm in Northern California right now, and I'm really interested in being a part of the inclusivity and diversity project that's going on with the community guild and things. And I'm a poet, and so I really have a fascination with word choices and selection of how to communicate clearly and transparently with people. And so I just want to see if it's possible for my poetry and my ability to use words to be like sustainable for me, and that I could be like empowered to continue that work and see it build people's approachability to the project as a whole. And so, yeah, that's just kind of my vision with my contribution and role. And I appreciate the values survey that you all created because it brought my attention to your interest in word choices and values and that there's a similarity there. And so that was really exciting for me to just do the survey and be like, wow, this is so exciting. And then kind of build on that and be able to contribute.
Sweet. Well, thanks for joining in today, Saturn. As a fellow poet in the community guild, we're always, down for more poets. Zach's doing some reconnaissance about maybe a poetry guild, which who knows where the world will take us. But Saturn, I'd love to catch up more and hear some of the pieces you're working on. Awesome. Cool. Well, we're going to keep it flowing here. Now, one of the things we are going to talk about today is Guild Games Spring 22. Now, this was a pretty interesting Guild Games. It was the second time we did Guild Games, and it was awesome. We did it not last week, but the week before. Last Friday, we tallied all the scores and crowned the Placemakers Guild the winning guild, taking the crown from the Product Guild, who had been holding the trophy as the winners of last season in winter 22. So the appeal board has been meeting. There's been long arduous calls back and forth. It's been intense. Some calls ran well into the evening, and we do have some updates on that front. Now, at the end of the call, I'll be sharing the official winner of Guild Games Spring 22. I'm not here to say at this time whether it was the Placemakers Guild or the Product Guild, but I don't know if y'all saw, there was a formal appeal actually filed with the Guild Games Review Council. And that committee has been meeting and seeing the merits of this appeal. And we will be officially closing out the appeal review period today at the end of this call. So, stay tuned for that formal announcement, but just wanted to fill y'all in. It was a great competition. All the guilds really showed out. I will say Media Guild, they performed better last time. It was really a battle between the Placemakers Guild and the Product Guild. And we're excited to finally put this one to rest as we look ahead to summer 22. But we'll get back to that in a second. Now, as y'all know, City Council just had its retreat in Minnesota. This is our seasonal retreat. Every 3 months, the City Council meets, they set the objectives and the budget for the upcoming season. So that was a big part of what we were doing. It was also my first time meeting a lot of the cabin folks in real life. Even though, I've been a contributor now for, 6 or 7 months, I had a moment where I was sitting around the campfire and I looked over at John Hillis sort of tending the fire, throwing on a piece of wood. And in that moment, I realized I was officially onboarded to cabin. So I just want to say it was a great retreat. And it's real out there. We are all real people. It's just a matter of when our in real life world intersect. And I just feel super blessed and energized by the interactions I got to share with everybody. But one of the big things that's coming down the pipe for cabin is quests. Now, we've been talking about this for a few months. And I want to, before we talk about how quests will look like moving forward, for some of y'all that are a little bit newer to how we get work done, I thought it'd be helpful to kind of look back a little bit to explain more about how we got to where we are now before we, actually march forward. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here. Before I do that, summer booking for summer camp at Mantaya is live. We'll talk a little bit more about that later, but Cabin's neighborhood up in the Eastern Sierra Mountains of California is a officially onboarded neighborhood, and we're really excited to put on some really great programming for the whole month of August. Before I talk about kind of the historical context on how work gets done, Chalice, do you want to share a little bit about what we're looking forward to at Montaya in August?
Yes. So it'll be broken up into 3 sections, mostly 2. The first 2-week session, and then the second 2-week session, and then the expedition that will be a backpacking outdoor adventure. You'll be immersed in nature the entirety of the month, but the 3-day backpacking trip will be kind of like an intense immersion. We are finalizing some of the hosts and some of the project, like the programming for it, but the survey is the best way to kind of seek interest and kind of like and then we'll reach out to you once you fill out that application.
Awesome. Great, thanks, Chalice.
If you have questions, reach out to me or just reach out to me. Or nobody else.
Okay, great. We've started some interest and, actually lining up people for their spots and their bed selections. So it's all happening here. We're very excited. This is the first time we've done sort of neighborhood takeover style where Cabin is going to, do a month-long programming activation. So very excited for that. But now back to where I was talking about how Cabin has gotten work done in the past. So in the beginning, it was bounties, and you can follow along as I work through kind of these points here, but these bounties were small atomic units of work that allowed new members to actually get involved and start contributing to Cabin's mission. Now, usually these bounties start off pretty small. They're ways that new community members can kind of provide a proof of work and show that, they can get work done. It was a great way for the DAO to see that community members were actually doing what they said they were going to do, and also showing how they actually worked and how they worked with others and their communication styles. And we have completed hundreds of bounties across hundreds of community members, which some of those community members, after completing bounties, actually turned into more part-time or full-time roles. That's actually how I first got started, doing some bounties for the Placemakers Guild. And then Jackson and I eventually founded the Community Guild in January. Now, in our onboarding experience over the last 6 months or so, we've kind of broke it down into 3 main things. First, you onboard to the DAO as a whole, then you onboard to a guild, and then you onboard to a project and actually start completing bounties within that project. This really ramped up last season when we had a concurrent guild budgeting planning where all of the guilds work together to come up with these budgets, propose them to the community for a vote on Snapshot, and then the community voted and passed these series of budgets that funded our operations for the last 3 months. Now, we continued to sort of experiment and iterate on how we get work done and how we get work done in a decentralized fashion. Last season, a duocratic spirit was born thanks to our very own Phil. And this was the idea that any Cabin member can propose a small project and instantly get approval to start working. And this still exists today. So we have a Duocracy channel in our Discord where you can post, a quick proposal, and you can instantly get funded up to 200 USDC or 10 Cabin, assuming that post gets at least 3 thumbs up. So this was kind of one of the first steps in helping encourage and empower contributors and Cabin members to have an idea and get to work and just start doing it. Now, this has kind of continued, and with this was born the idea of Quests. Quests actually came out of our city council retreat last season, and now as we look ahead and actually begin summer 22, basically next week, in July 1st, quests are actually replacing the old system of guild-specific budgets. So before, guilds passed budgets and then allocated those budgets to projects. Now, individuals can actually propose quests with a group of people, which are called fellowships, and together they actually complete this work. It's a very specific metric-driven process where basically the DAO can fund a project, put money in, and see results come out. Now, I want to hold some space to talk a little bit more about Quest. So I'm going to throw the mic over to our very own caretaker to just provide a little bit of context on Quest as we look forward and continue to iterate on how Cabin gets work done. John, the floor is yours.
Awesome. Thank you, JD. If you can either pass the screen sharing over to me or just open up the guide to Quest there in a new tab, we can talk through it. This is going to be your best resource to understand what's happening with Quest. And there's a couple other documents there with some more details, a separate broken out template in case you're interested in making a Quest. But as JD said, Quests are how we allocate internal resources to accomplish goals. So the city council met last week. We talked about objectives for the DAO for the next season. And then Quests, we set a budget for the objectives, and people can propose quests that help contribute to those objectives. So if you scroll down here, keep going. Cool. So yeah, up a little bit. So basically this is the process, right? The city council determined the budget, a fellowship comes together and says, hey, we want to do a quest. This is typically something that, could last anywhere from weeks to up to the season, 3 months, and could be a single person, could be a small group. What happens is you propose a quest, you come to the city council and you say, hey, here's something we want to work on. The city council evaluates if it meets these criteria listed here, if it's complete, clear, actionable, etc. And then if it meets those things, it goes to a normal governance proposal to the DAO using our quadratic multi-choice voting. The DAO votes on it, and then it can be considered approved, and you're off to the races to get started with your quest. So if you scroll down here a little bit further, okay, so this is just this sort of like seasonal cadence for quests. You can see we're right at this point where by 2 weeks before the season, the city council has now met. And today we'll be discussing what those objectives and budgets are for next season. And then starting at the beginning of the new season, which is July 1st, the new season begins, budget allocations are available, and quest proposals can be approved. So if you're interested in doing a quest, you can get started now. Several city council members have already gotten started putting their own quests together. There's a good example linked in the main agenda from Roxine, as well as a template. The template's also here in this document. So you can see both the weekly cadence and the template here. So the way that this works is you can draft one of these quests and you can kind of get informal feedback. And then you can submit it to the city council. We vote as a DAO. And it's this weekly cadence where proposals are submitted on Monday. Voting goes until Thursday. And to create a quest, you just use this template here where you outline who's participating in it, what the objective is that you're targeting, what the results are that you're trying to achieve, how much budget you want, what the timeline is, supporting materials about why this is a good idea. So that's the basic idea for a quest. And there's also our same duocracy process still exists as well.
I have a question.
Sure.
Yeah, go for it.
Thanks, John, and hi. So for the right here, or where you just were, it had indicated, yeah, for under budget that you can allocate some X amount of cabin and Y amount of USDC. And so right now I'm close to having a completed proposal for the podcast's second season and the quests, the associated quest that goes with that. And there's all these awesome contributors on the project, some of whom were involved before, others who are newer to the team, like a video editing person. And so as we're thinking about like comp for all of these different people, are there guidelines for how we should think about the distribution for cabin and USDC?
Yeah, fantastic question, Jackson. Thank you. So it's the intent here was that we're leaving this open to the quest proposer to set their own budget in both cabin and USDC. And so that's really up to you as you propose it. As we'll talk about in just a minute, when the city council met last week, we approved a budget for the next season of $180,000 USDC and 20,000 cabin. And so, the proposals that will come through the city council and be voted on by the DAO will be constrained by those budgets. But it'll be up to each group to decide, what they want to request. And this also means that because we're kind of allowing people to set their own ratios and amounts here, we also discussed what we've been discussing for several weeks, but we'd like to move forward with a governance vote on changing the current liquidity structure. So basically removing the current Uniswap liquidity pool, since we're giving a new way for contributors to determine their own sort of preferences and ratios between these two types of compensation.
Okay, awesome. That's super helpful. I was just asking also in part to clarify, because I heard somewhere, maybe it was a city council call or that we were flirting with this idea of, if once you hold X number of cabin, you can take Z percentage of your comp in USDC, but it sounds like that's not currently the case based off of what you just shared, and that instead.
Yeah, we did discuss that more. We did not actually arrive at an official proposal there, but I think this is the sort of thing where, right, it's going to be an iterative process. Things will come to the city council for discussion. We'll give feedback on them. And I think we probably will end up, right, with a higher likelihood to sort of be in favor of proposals that, have higher USDC components if the people proposing it, are already significant cabin holders. I think generally the preference otherwise is that for smaller projects or things that are coming from people who are not already significant cabin holders, that they take more of the compensation in cabin.
Yeah, I think that the full fleshing that out is definitely beyond the scope of that call, but I do think that's an interesting model for what it's worth, and I suspect that we'll formalize that in coming weeks. But cool, thanks. End of my questions. Zach's hand's raised.
Thanks, Jackson. What's up, Zach?
Does it matter where we write quest proposals, and what's the process of actually submitting one to the city council?
Great question. Yeah, so you can just create a new, so if you go back, JD, this same template, so go back to the main agenda. Yeah, so this next link here is just the template. So, just the simplified version as a new sheet. So you can just make a copy of this and fill it in. And then I don't think we've actually set up the Discord channel for this yet. So maybe right after this, the three of us can circle up and take care of that. But there will be a Discord channel where you can just submit your requests for feedback and then to put it onto the docket for discussion with the city council.
Awesome. Daryl, you have your hand raised.
Yeah, I had two questions. So the first is sort of just the difference between the any DAO member who can quickly propose a project for around 200 USDC versus these larger quests. So I guess just my understanding is the nature of the work. If it's just like a small quick thing, then it's better to just do that in the channel. But if it's a more elaborate, more involved project, you should transform that into a quest. Is that correct?
Hey, Daryl, we're having a little trouble hearing you.
Oh,
But
okay,
I think I caught that. Yeah. So the answer there is Duocracy is intended for smaller things. So if it basically is under the $200 threshold, then you can just use the Duocracy process. If it's a bigger project, then you'd go through the quest process.
Okay, and then my other question is, given that you guys said you had approved, a certain number of USDC and cabin for the next period of time, is there anywhere where we can sort of see, you know, a amalgamation of all the proposals that have been put forward publicly, and then how much that adds up to, just so you can get a sense of perhaps of, you know, okay, this is gonna be 10 times more than anyone else is asking, or we're already, you know, 50% over the maximum allocated in terms of proposals.
Yeah, that's a great idea. We don't have any plans right now beyond the Discord channel, but I think that is something that we'll want for the city council. So we'll go ahead and make a clarity document where we can just track that. In fact, I see Chalice opening up a new tab right now as if she's just going to go ahead and do that as we're talking. So thank you very much for the feedback, Daryl.
Yeah, great questions. Awesome. Any other questions before we keep it rolling? We'll also, my goal is to have the meeting wrapped.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just a matter of the integrations themselves, you know, so it's like.
Hey, Robert, we're hearing, there we go. Thank you.
I love to hear all of the projects that are happening in the background, though. I'm actually working for another DAO right now as well with my toes typing away. Awesome. Okay, cool. This is great stuff. So I'm gonna try to leave some time at the end for some questions as well, because we will be sharing a couple other announcements that may prompt some other questions. Sweet. So as y'all know, Cabin is building a decentralized city. So thought it was a great opportunity here while we're at the crossroads between two seasons to look back at some ancient city-states in Greece. Actually in ancient Greece at a time, there were around 1,000 independently governed city-states. Within one of those city-states was Athens. And within Athens lived a famous philosopher by the name of Plato. Now, y'all might have heard of Plato, and you might be familiar with his philosophical and political theory and writings he's done, specifically in the Republic, which is one of his most well-known, you know, written pieces. But many people might not know that Plato also talked a lot about numbers in this text, the Republic. And because he talked about numbers, I thought, you know what, maybe it's a good time for us to start talking about a little bit of numbers. So let's start with the number 1. Now, the number 1 is important because the city council was reflecting back on this season, and we saw we were kind of going in a lot of different ways. And as we look back, we don't really have so much tangibly to show for that work. Now, of course, we released 2, you know, MVPs within the product guild. We had some amazing programming and retreats, and it was awesome. But we thought it was a great opportunity to kind of focus a little bit and just focus on one specific objective this season. So I'll pose a question to the DAO right here. Does anyone know or wants to guess what our one objective is for this next season, summer 22?
10,000.
10,000. That's just a number, Tippy. I'm going to need more. We'll take one more guess. We'll take one more guess. Only one objective for Cabin. One objective. Okay, I'm going to tell y'all. Our one objective for summer 22 is very simple. It's neighborhood development. Neighborhood development. So let's go on to the number 2, because I think this one objective can kind of split into 2 things within neighborhood development. One is increasing the efficiency, occupancy, capacity, and profitability of our existing engagements with our neighborhoods. And the second piece is adding new neighborhoods. So that 1 gets split into 2, but now we're on 3. And for 3, that number stands out to me because that's the amount of neighborhoods we have in our network right now, between Mantaya, Neighborhood 0, and Radish. Now, I know it might have been a while since people have had a formal math class, but does anybody remember what prime numbers are? What makes a number a prime number?
Strong sauce.
Strong sauce. Close, but off target. I would recommend trying that answer for a future question, though. So prime numbers are numbers that are divisible only by themselves and 1. right? So an example of prime numbers like 2, 3, 5, 7, but they're also more strange prime numbers like 11, 13, 17, 19, 23, and 29. Now, these prime numbers actually make up the building blocks of larger, more divisible numbers. But with prime numbers, there are also numbers that are non-prime that have a lot of factors that can be divided into them. So take example of 12. 12 is divisible by 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, and itself 12. 12 like a dozen of eggs, so I can decide if I want to eat, 1, 2, 3, 4, or I think I saw in the city council retreat, Zach actually made 6 eggs at once. And maybe that's why we actually landed on 12 as a dozen, because it can be divided into so many different small things. Or you take a number like 60, the number of seconds in a minute, or that can be divided into so many different things. Or 360, like the number of degrees in a circle. So these are some of the things Plato was really thinking about when he was analyzing numbers. And one number he was specifically drawn to was the number 5,040. What's interesting about the number 5,040 is that it actually has 60 factors that can be divided into it. In fact, every number between 1 and 10 divides into 5,040. So Plato had a fascination with this number, and he was talking about 5,040 in his writing as an ideal size for a city-state. An ideal size of amount of people that can occupy a space, but also can be divided into many smaller subgroups. So, John, do you have any idea why I'm rambling on about numbers and prime numbers and maybe the number 5,040 in particular?
What a great setup, JD. Thank you. Yes. So we've talked about our single objective for summer 22, developing neighborhoods. We've talked about our budget for that objective, which is going to be the same as last season. And what JD has just covered here is the third piece of information that we really came out of the city council retreat with, which is not just thinking about this next season, but thinking about the fact that that budget enables us to have 10 more seasons of cabin with our current run rate. And that we wanted to set a kind of longer term goal that is very tangible for where we go as a community. And because our goal is about developing neighborhoods, it's about building out capacity at existing neighborhoods as well as adding new neighborhoods. We need to know, how many neighborhoods do we need to have? How many beds do we need to have in those neighborhoods? And how many heads do we want to put in those beds? And the number that we came to, we looked all the way back in time and decided that Plato actually had it right, that 5,040 was a pretty good number for a city state. It's a number that's big enough that it's a lot of people. You can have a lot of diversity, a lot of a strong economy across 5,040 people, but it's also small enough that, as JD said, and as Plato said, you can theoretically sort of get everybody in the same room and on the same page about things. And so we thought that was a pretty interesting target for us to aim for. And so what we came to was this idea of trying to figure out what it would take to scale cabin up to 5,040 residents. Now, we did some exercises where we talked about what cabin might look like on a 5-year time horizon, also maybe on a 50-year time horizon. And we decided to set a pretty aggressive initial goal here of 50/40 by 25. What would it look like to get to 5,040 residents by 2025? I don't know that we want to get too attached to the 2025 number, because of course this is a balance between scaling the community and growing and also maintaining quality. And so we'll always need to balance those two things and make sure that we're growing at a sustainable rate to maintain a really high quality of community. But what we found as a city council, as we sat around and talked about this, was that by having this really tangible number of 5,040, it helped us imagine what this city could really look like, how big we wanted it to get, how many neighborhoods we needed, how big those neighborhoods should be, and how big the resulting economy of that city would be. So it's a very helpful way to kind of visualize and think about a medium-term goal for where we want to get to as a community.
I love it, John. 50-40 by 25, or whenever the time is right. So, you know, one of the phrases we were throwing around a lot during this retreat, as John mentioned, is this idea of heads in beds, and actually looking a little bit more quantitatively about what we're doing. Now, on our road to getting heads in beds, we need to get beds in heads first. And that's kind of where the demand side comes from and the creative fuel. So that's where things like the Media Guild really shines, and this forthcoming quest that Jackson and the podcasting team are going to propose. So I want to spin it over to Roxine for a little Media Guild update to talk about how we're going to get beds in people's heads. Roxine?
So one of the, oops. Are you? Here. Yeah, okay, talking this one. Okay, I'm gonna still look at this because I have my camera. So one of the cool things about that 5,040 number is the fact that we can actually now be very specific about who we're creating media for, who we're generating demand for. And I think when we're talking to city council, it's not just people who are in Web3 or in DAOs already, but it's basically every knowledge worker that can work remotely and be in Cabin's network. So one of the things that we're starting to do in the media, and like you can look at my quest proposal for this, is sharing Cabin stories. The stories of how people got into Cabin, how they started contributing, and their experiences in our neighborhood. So that's the demand side of things. Like, how do we gather these people who want to test out our network, who want to sign year-long leases or month-long leases with us? And then once we get to a critical mass of that, and that's kind of where the 5,040 people come from. If we're going to run even more numbers, so 5,040, that's the number of people living in it, that's our conversion. But we would need at least 50,000 people in our overall community who are working in the city, not just the people who are living in it. So if we're going to run the numbers, we have a long way to go. We have a lot of articles to write. We have a lot of podcast episodes to produce. So excited to get on these quests and have people writing their proposals towards this number.
Very excited to see what the Media Guild and Roxine stewarding this quest will come up with. Jackson, there's been some ideas circulating and some rumors spreading about what the second season of Campfire will be. Can you give us a little preview, perhaps? I'm itching for that next episode.
Sure. So, and I have some questions afterwards. So
Perfect.
I'll humor you and then you humor me.
Okay.
So second season, a few different thoughts. The first season was about the tips, tricks, and tactics of how decentralized organizations, note that that's not DAOs, it's decentralized organizations, achieve wildly ambitious and creative goals. And so that was really fun, like got some really great frameworks from a lot of people, and loved the sort of like niche that we were developing from an editorial perspective. But like, while that is an interesting niche, is it the one that is most relevant to us? Maybe, but in the light of this proposal, perhaps, or of this singular objective, I think what is, perhaps, I'm laughing at John's message. I think what is most interesting is tips, tricks, and tactics of how cities are built. So every episode that comes out on Wednesdays in the coming season will be focused on different city building projects and the frameworks that other organizations like Cul-de-sac, Praxis, different, like there's this one Saudi Arabian funded project, there's this project funded by Mark Laurie. There's all kinds of different city building projects that are happening in like really centralized ways. So what can we learn from the people that have been doing that, and how can we ask the right questions that inform our strategy as we build out these other neighborhoods will be very interesting. That being said, we're also, previously we were doing an episode a week. In the proposal that is forthcoming, we are going to try to do an episode a week of the city episodes, and then every other Friday, still revisit our roots and profile different decentralized organizations in our space who are and keep sort of the original editorial framework there. So I hope that's helpful. Proposal should be more clear and less full of qualifying statements than my verbiage just now. I have a lot of questions about this 50-40 goal and our definition of residents. So I'm curious, you're not sure who wants to answer here, but when we say residents, 50-40 residents, does that mean concurrent residents? What sort of optionality are we offering on lease term, for if lease is even the right word, because I think a lot of people on this call have been residents for a week or maybe a month. But I haven't seen like a year lease model. What does that look like? And yeah, what does done look like from in the 50-40 thing? Is it 50-40 residents ever or concurrently? And yeah, curious on that first.
Yeah, so let me maybe start by just saying that I think part of the exciting part about this goal is that it forces us to seriously consider these questions, right? And so it's actually intentionally ambiguous now, because I think we need to figure out exactly what it does mean to be a cabin resident. But the way we were talking about this at the city council retreat, at least, was that our current method of essentially running retreats and residencies is a great way to scale supply liquidity. But that longer term, as we get supply liquidity, that unlocks our ability to have more people who really do live either at single locations or nomadically across the cabin network, or some combination of the two. And that actually several members of the city council, including JD and Chalice, have shared recent stories from these past few weeks as they've been searching for leases. You may be familiar with this, Jackson, as a co-signer on one of these leases, that it's really hard for digitally nomadic people who work in DAOs, and may not have traditional pay stubs, to get leases. And most leases are not only hard to get because of the sort of paperwork and legal requirements, but also tend to be pretty inflexible and have year-long minimums. And so I think we talked about the fact that there's a pretty compelling product that we can offer that gives people flexibility, both in terms of length and in terms of location. And that, maybe is backed not by people's pay stubs, but by their on-chain revenue, or by the reputation that they build, within their cabin passports.
Super cool. JD will know that we've paid for quite a few credit reports in the last few weeks. So the idea of on-chain reports that could verify revenue is really cool. How does the cabin token factor into this? Have you thought about that? Did you talk about that at all?
Yeah, definitely. So, as we continue to develop neighborhoods, we will I think, continue to refine this. But the current billboards are a good example of the type of way that we think this will likely play out, right? To access different options within each neighborhood, the neighborhood can set their own kind of like limits and guidelines around what cabin holdings and what passport stamp holdings are required in order to do things in that neighborhood. I would expect that continues to be the case.
Okay.
I know you got one more, Jackson. Come on.
I mean, I don't want to ask just to ask. I guess, like, if you have any examples of what you just talked about, John, like there's this idea that like anyone can set their own is cool, but like what might a model at Neighborhood Zero look like for someone who wanted to do like a longer term lease, especially if like the whole argument is that, hey, like for digital nomads, we want to create like a flexible way for them to go from spot to spot. But like, how can that be true if each spot also has its own like rules and regulations? So what's
I think like one implementation here is that like there's a stamp that shows that you've stayed at Neighborhood Zero. And so like for your average cabin resident staying, there's a cap of maybe 3 months to stay at Neighborhood Zero. But if you've stayed at Neighborhood Zero, then the option comes available to stay there for longer, right? Or something like that.
Yeah, I think we also need to, we're trying to be hesitant about the word
Yeah.
lease because lease is a pretty loaded term. But I think you could imagine, right, a sort of setup where you're essentially like, you're paying rent to, and this is all hypothetical, right? But that's the world we're living in. We're trying to like imagine these futures of 5,040 residents. You could imagine a future where cabin is, you know, collecting some sort of like on-chain rent that then gives you access to a set of neighborhoods that you know, have opted into that program and like take splits or shares of that rent based on where you stay. Right. You could imagine other ways that we do it as well. You could imagine that you're doing sort of like stays at individual neighborhoods and just paying them directly. But yeah, I think the key here is to have mixed use, a range of options, right, where we can get people who are coming for variable lengths of stays and variable types of stays across different properties, because that mixed use is what both gives us consistent utilization of properties and also more interesting cultural interactions between members of the community. Yeah, and then Tippy also says maybe rent could be human capital like work. So totally, maybe a neighborhood could say, hey, you can, if you know how to do woodwork, you know, you can come stay here and do this project, and that counts as your rent, right? That we want neighborhoods to have that sort of flexibility. A great example of this that we're piloting is Charlie, right, is going to be coming out to Neighborhood Zero in the fall and doing a long-term stay and building more cabins while he's on site, which not only is a good example of like a long-term residency at the cabins, but then also creates more supply that are these one-off individual cabin units that can be used for different types of residencies than our current 4-bedroom shipping container cabin.
Yeah, love the Charlie model. Can't wait to see those videos.
Can't wait to see the stamp that has just Charlie's face on it.
I want that.
I
mean the Charlie stamp.
I want the Charlie approval.
Just for the sake of time, I want to squeeze in another question, which is I want to echo what Shadman wrote in the chat. Just like, you know, he sees the value pop for residents, but what's the pitch to new prospective neighborhoods? Especially because given that 50-40 residents by 2025 is our goal, that's, you know, less than 3 years away. Just quick math, like 5,000 residents, neighborhoods.
We're gonna need a lot of neighborhoods.
Yeah, we need a lot of neighborhoods. Like, how are we gonna like incentivize quick adoption of neighborhoods?
Yeah, so let's be clear first that the 2025 goal is so that we can start talking about this, right, and start thinking about what this would look like. I don't think we necessarily would hold ourselves to that timeline if, you know, as you said, it may be that that's too that would require too fast of growth to maintain our level of quality. So we should use this as a planning exercise to decide what kind of timeline makes sense. But yeah, I think the answer here is that neighborhoods are looking for different things, which is part of why the mixed use matters. But most neighborhoods are looking for groups of interesting people to come stay at them. And I think that's exactly what cabin is and what cabin can provide. And in particular, if those are people who have unique skills, to Tippy's point, you know, it may be that there's actually non-financial exchange transactions that can be a part of this that are more valuable both to the neighborhood and to the individual staying.
One way I'm thinking about this too is like, say I have a retreat center that I hold, you know, big conferences and weddings at, and I know that the fall, because, you know, I'm up in Maine where the, you know, the leaves are changing, that's my money season for weddings, right? And I always know that I'm booked out for September, October, November for weddings. But the spring or the winter is where I kind of struggle. Well, maybe I could strike an agreement with cabin where I know that for 3 months every spring, cabin is sort of operating my property, and then they run, you know, their programming out of that. And then for the other 3 months, my family uses, you know, the property. So I think there could be like kind of time block agreements as well. So yeah, I think there are a lot of value adds to neighborhoods as they think about sort of the stack of ways they could rent their property out. Maybe they do a month on Shmer Me and Me, but they want to have other organizations or people come stay for the other time. Okay, cool. I want to be mindful of time. We only have 5 minutes left, so just going back to the agenda. Passports, they're going to be a big part of this equation because one thing we can consider with a new neighborhood is that hey, I'm tired of renting my place out on Shmer Me and Me because a bunch of strangers are coming and I don't know who these people are and they just trash my place. Yes, I could take a look at the reviews, but what is like a deeper way to actually know who these people are? I wish I could call a friend up and actually have them tell me a little bit more, or something I could perhaps pull up to actually see more. So I'm trying to think if there could be a good product for this. And I'm thinking we have the guy here that can help us with a product like this. So Zach, do you want to tell us a little bit more about how passports might actually fold into this whole picture here?
Yeah, you capitalized on a great transition there, which is this concept of trust. The thing that we hear from neighborhoods, potential neighborhoods, whenever we're talking about them, is like, how do we know who's coming to stay? And that's not only like, how do we know who's coming to stay at our property, but if I'm talking to someone who's this like friendly sounding Canadian person, how do I know that they're actually like an architect, or how do I know that they can actually lead a building, right? And the answer to that is passports, right? As Cabin starts using passports, as our guilds start using passports, as other communities start using passports, we're going to be able to establish greater on-chain reputation for people in the ways that they've contributed by recognizing that contribution, as well as group membership with a passport stamp. And so we'd be able to say like, okay, this person who I'm talking to and who is proposing that they come and stay at my neighborhood and run a build week or a build month, they're a part of the Builders Guild. They've been a part of the Builders Guild for 6 months, and they participated in 3 other build weeks, right? Or this is their 4th build week that they're participating in, and their 2nd that they're leading, right? And so we're able to like get that kind of data about people and kind of attached to their profile as they're interacting with everybody in the Cabin network. That is the core value prop of passports.
Awesome. So we're going to continue to develop this product that we have the MVP for, and super excited about that. Now we are coming up on the hour, so we do have some Guild Games announcements. The appeal board is ready to actually come forth out of the darkness and share. But before we do that, though, we have 2 final updates. One is the writers residency. That's a really cool activation where Roxine and the Media Guild and a collection of writers are actually coming out to Neighborhood Zero for the month of July. Roxine, do you have anything to share on the writers residency? I know the spots are pretty much all booked up, but just wanted to have some space if you wanted to share anything on that front.
Yeah, so the spots are booked up. We have a combination of cabin folks, and we also have people like all over the world. One resident is flying in from the UK, another one is flying in from Phuket. She's taking a 40-hour flight just to get to the residency. And we're super excited to have such a diverse group of people coming to the cabin. We might have some other cabin folks just coming in throughout the month as well, so it's going to be a lot of interaction. I'm super excited to be finally hosting a residency and kind of just coming full circle from how I started with cabin and where I am now. So I'm excited to keep y'all in the loop as well. I'll be writing more articles on this throughout the month.
Very cool. Excited to see the content for the writers residency. One other update is regarding the Hopes and Dreams initiative. So we have a really awesome working group that has formed and already had a couple of sessions. It's been a cool mix of people that have, big dreams for unique real estate projects they want to bring to life. But it's also a mix of people that are actively working on these projects right now. So our meeting yesterday was super cool. We had different folks kind of sharing updates on their projects. Other folks were chiming in, oh, if you're doing this, maybe you think about that. And it's been a really cool kind of peer-to-peer working group that's forming. And the idea is, how do we help people take their big hopes and dreams to bring these real estate projects to life? And how can the cabin and the cabin greater ecosystem actually help provide resources to these folks. So really excited to continue working on this initiative. If you know anybody that think might be a good fit, whether they, you know, want to start a neighborhood, whether they are working on a project like this, or maybe they're like a super experienced real estate developer for 30 years, or an architect that designs tiny houses, or someone with a unique technical skill set that has experience. Maybe they know a lot about local municipality zoning codes, or the best places to build these unique, you know, properties in the country or the world. Please reach out to me and I can get them looped into the group. It's a really great working group, and we might even finish off this working group at the end of next season with a Hopes and Dreams Summit, almost like a working residency program where different people can fly in and we can kind of open up the hatch at Neighborhood Zero, see how that project came to life, and also, you know, have both virtual and in real life programming to help people along their journey. But we are at 6:01. I'm on the East Coast here, so unfortunately, I don't want to run over, so we're going to have to postpone the Guild Games announcement. No, I'm kidding. So this appeal was a well put together appeal. So big shouts out to Rachel and the Product Guild for putting this appeal together. And, you know, really what it came down to is there was someone named Andy K. Now, Andy, if you're on this call, please speak up. But Andy K is one of the most active people I've ever not met in real life. And Andy K was in the Strava group for the movement challenge, where different members of different guilds get points for running or walking or swimming. And let me just tell you, Andy K is a tank. He led everyone in movement for this recent Guild Games challenge, and so much to a point where he was classified as a placemaker. And the amount of points that Andy K gotten, we are all Andy K. The amount of points that Andy K got for the Placemakers Guild actually tipped the scale and allowed the Placemakers Guild to finish with the most amount of points. But here, my friends, lies the appeal. No one's really met Andy K. Andy, are you okay, K? Are you with us, Andy? Are you here? Did you hear? Are you just happen to be in the Strava group? Are you in the DAO? So this was when the fact-finding mission began. And really a big question is, what actually constitutes being in the DAO? So we looked, okay, does Andy have any cabin? Andy doesn't have any cabin. Okay. Maybe Andy did a bounty and sold the cabin. Has Andy ever completed a bounty? Andy has never completed a bounty. So these questions started coming. And as we peeled back the layers, the appeal board was really starting to see, you know, is Andy actually, you know, a member of the Placemakers Guild in the DAO, and do his points count? Because if they do, the Placemakers Guild wins. But if they don't, the Product Guild wins. So as you can see, I've had to clear my schedule. This has been a lot of work here to get to the bottom of this. And, you know, what it comes down to, my friends, is that on the Guild Games, the beginning of the Guild Games, what is actually, you know, said in the rules is that you have to change your Discord handle to pledge your allegiance to which guild you'll be scoring points for. So we looked, Andy didn't pledge any allegiance. Okay, fine, maybe we can look past that. But then we look back, when was the last time that Andy shared any messages? It was April 1st, months ago. But April 1st technically was the first day of Spring 22 season. So does that qualify him? Then we look back at previous messages that this mysterious Andy K had shared about how last time, actually, if you remember, Jackson, that Andy K had not put his allegiance, but he shared in a message that he would be aligned with the Placemakers Guild, but next time he would align with the Product Guild. So it was a lot going on. Because of all of this, Cabin is an inclusive space, right? And there's questions about who is actually in the community and who is not in the community. And I think this is actually the takeaway from this story, because we need to better define who is an audience member. And of course, we're pro lurking, but these are a lot of cut the feed. Okay. So what it comes down to is Andy is the sole winner. We're a very inclusive community. And of course, we welcome people from all walks of life. but Andy did not follow some of the basic needs to be qualified in this guild games to be a member of the Placemakers Guild and have his hard work in the Strava Movement Challenge count towards the scoring of the Placemakers Guild. So with that, we have a monumental overturn. Placemakers Guild is not the winner of Guild Games Spring 22. And the crown is returned to Zach, Sadie, and the Product Guild, and Rachel, and Tippy, and Henry, and everyone that showed up to the Product Guild. So congrats to the Product Guild for holding on to the crown, but we'll see if they can hold on to it.
Way to go,
for the next Guild
Product!
Games. We appreciate everyone for coming out to Guild Games and to the session today. We have a lot
Hold
of
on, I have the receipts. I have evidence, written documentation that Andy K has pledged for Placemakers.
Really, let's bring those forth. Bring those forth.
Oh shit.
Oh
Yes,
my
we
goodness.
needed you, Phil.
I just texted it to you, John Dean. I can also share my screen if folks would like to see this.
Please.
I mean,
We're out of
this
time.
one-
Okay,
Katie, are you ready for this?
so this is a lot. So Andy K on April 1st said, gotcha. I just DM'd with Jackson and chose Placemakers. I will go with Product for the next one since I'm still unsure where I fit within the community, but would most likely between those two. Phil, we appreciate you sharing that and your interest in the counter appeal being the steward of the Placemakers Guild, but this message was actually included in the appeal already that was submitted by the Product Guild. And this message from April 1st, 2022 was in response to his previous engagement in Guild Games Winter 22. And actually, if you read this message, he said, I will go with Product for the next one. Now, we haven't confirmed that he actually will go with Product or will not. So his score and his movement challenge points have been voided. Therefore, the crown stays with Product Guild, making them back-to-back Guild Games champions. So congrats to the Product Guild. But
Oh my God.
we'll see if the
Phil, we
Product
will
Guild
redeem
hold on to it. Now,
How about just do better next time?
Okay, says the caretaker who didn't partake.
I'm getting worked up. I'm gonna need another shower because this is getting heated out here. We
This is
appreciate
getting
this
out of
passion.
control.
Please bring this passion to the next Guild Games and it will manifest in points that will give you the crown. Now, Product Guild, please, from here, we are going to distribute the 100 cabin winning amount, and we will also be issuing the Product Guild Games Spring 22 stamp. That will be official passport stamp. So I just want to say thank you everyone for coming out. We are 8 minutes over, and that's not how we roll out here. So I'm gonna let y'all go, but I just want to say it's been fun. Shouts out to all the guilds for doing their thing out here. If you have any questions about quests, budgets, our single objective, 50-40 residents, let me know. I appreciate y'all sending love from Philly today, and we will talk to you soon, my friends.
Thank you, Appeal Board, for your gracious considerations.
We appreciate you. We appreciate you.
Very wise,
you,
wise
everybody.
decision making.
Bye, y'all.
Axon. Thanks, Robert.
That's good.
Woo. Sweating from that one.
Are you going to Montaya?
I would like to, yeah.